Live from Casa del Rio in Nashville, Tennessee, just down the river from the Grand Ole Opry, it's the Dreamers Road with Stephanie Urbina Jones and the Honky Tonk Mariachi. Grab a seat, grab a drink, saddle up, and let's take a ride down this Dreamers Road. Vámonos, y'all.
Hola, mis amigos. This is Stephanie Urbina Jones. This is a very bittersweet edition of the Dreamers Road. Tonight we come together to honor and to celebrate the life of the sculptor, the painter, the preacher, the teacher, the artist of life, Bill Worrell. I met this amazing dreamer about 20 years ago when I was just starting my recording career. I was terrified and had so much doubt. And Bill Worrell was one of the magic people I met on my path that taught me to dance, to believe, to dream, to go for it, and to live my love. Anyone that crossed Bill's path was better for it, and he will live on in our hearts and in our dreams from this day forward. This interview tonight was filmed back in December. It's part of Worrell's story, the magic that made this man, and also includes part of his documentary that you can also view. I encourage you to sit back, take in every word, and above all, remember to go for your dreams and always keep believing. Worrell, you will be missed forever, but you'll always be with us in our hearts. Enjoy, you guys, this Dreamers Road with Bill Worrell.
En la madrugada full moon above.
Bill Worrell, famed visual artist, sculptor, writer, songwriter, musician, adventurer, canoeist, dog lover, and collector of people.
The rains came and they kept coming, and
a 4 or 5 foot wall of water came down, carrying rocks and stones and logs.
We spent 5 to 6 days on the Pecos. 2 of those days we were holed up in caves waiting for a flash flood to recede enough to where we could continue the Odyssey.
what he tells is that he knew from right then that it was going to change his life.
Hola, mis amigos. This is Stephanie Urbina Jones coming to you. I hope each of you had a wonderful Christmas, found some sweet moments and joys with those you love, spent some family time, even if it was over Zoom. I'm so excited to be here with y'all tonight. I'm so excited to share with you one of my favorite people in the world. Mr. Bill Worrell is going to be coming up in a little while. I have an interview with him. Here he is, a picture of him, you guys. Famed sculptor, painter, writer, and an amazing, amazing artist of life. There's some people that you learn so much just by being with, in their presence, in their joy, in their creation. And of course, Mr. Bill Worrell, I'm privileged and lucky that my road, my dreamer's road, crossed his about 20 years ago when I was just learning how to dream and believe. And he was already a magnificent dreamer, creating these sculptures and paintings and songs. You're going to get to hear all about it. You know, there was a song when I first, a book that many of us read many years ago that came out by Julia Cameron, the artist people. And living and being around Bill Worrell gives you that kind of feeling. After I met Bill, I had a big dream in my heart. Many of you know about it. I built a house in just outside of Nashville on the Cumberland River. It's the same river that crosses through downtown Nashville. And I used to go to the third floor of the house that we built, and you could see the Grand Ole Opry. And for 20 years, I would dream as that boat would go by, carrying my dreams down the river, praying that one day I too would get to debut. And here's a moment I wanted to share with y'all. I want to dedicate this to the late, great Charlie Pride. Is anybody going to San Antonio? A little snapshot from my debut at the Grand Ole Opry, you guys. Check it out. I still can live that moment over and over again. I always say some dreams are worth living, dreaming a lifetime to live, and that certainly was one of them. Again, I'm so excited, you guys. I hope y'all are listening in, inviting your friends and your family and even your kids in for this very special interview with this very special human being that taught me about the big eye, what that meant, the big eye. Stephanie, do you have the big eye? What's going on in your heart? What's going on in your imagination? He taught me about art and the art that comes from the heart and about the architect of the universe. And he reminds me over and over again that God loves it when we dance. I'm so honored and excited to be sharing an interview with you with Mr. Bill Worrell. Check out this little snapshot of a documentary about him before our interview.
En la madrugada, full moon above.
Bill Worrell, famed visual artist, sculptor, writer, songwriter, musician, adventurer, canoeist, dog lover, and collector of people.
The rains came and they kept coming, and
A 4 or 5 foot wall of water came down, carrying rocks and stones and logs.
We spent 5 to 6 days on the Pecos. 2 of those days we were holed up in caves waiting for a flash flood to recede enough to where we could continue the Odyssey.
what he tells is that he knew from right then that it was going to change his life.
Hola, mis amigos, and welcome back. I am so deeply, deeply honored and excited this Christmas season to be here with one of my all-time favorite people in the whole world. As I just shared with y'all, my Dreamer's Road crossed the paths of this amazing artist, sculptor, painter, adventurer, and the list goes on and on, Mr. Bill Worrell. Hey, Bill.
Hello, Stephanie. It's so nice to see you.
Oh, it just warms my heart to see you. You know, I've loved doing this Dreamer's Road, mostly because I get to connect with people that have crossed my road and my path and really been forks in the road like you were for me. And so I'm honored to be here today to interview you and to share your magic with so many people.
The honor is mine.
Well, let's get started. So here's my first question. You know, I've been doing my research, and of course I knew this, but what was it like growing up in Colorado City, Texas? You know, how did nature, how did the Wild West and Texas influence who you became on your Dreamer's Road?
it was a marvelous set of experiences, one after another, after another, after another, after another. I was fortunate enough to be reared in this small little town. Population was about 5,000, and I think that's because the Chamber of Commerce counted the parakeets and dogs and pets that people had. 3 blocks to the east, and I could be at the city park. No, that was 6 blocks. 6 blocks to the west, I could be on the banks of what you would call the Colorado River, which locals call the Colorado River. Starts up near the border of New Mexico and Texas, flows through the state of Texas down to Matagorda Bay. Marvelous river, loaded on side to side with ancient Indian campsites. And we used to prowl those hills and find arrowheads and flint artifacts by the sackfuls. And it was just a constant adventure. What they called public schooling seemed to get in the way of our adventures many times. We would much rather be out on the creek banks, chasing down animals or hunting arrowheads or doing something than we had sitting in a classroom. But it was just a marvelous, marvelous experience. We Colorado City, as the locals call it, Colorado would be the correct pronunciation. It's north of San Angelo, 70 miles, west of Abilene, 68 miles, east of Big Spring, 40 miles, south of Lubbock, 100 miles. And we thought the world ended somewhere over in the San Angelo, Abilene, Big Spring, Lubbock area. We thought that was the drop-off place. Whether it was round or flat, that was kind of the end of the world. And it was amazing to us that somebody might know somebody who knew somebody who had met somebody. Like Perry Como, somebody from Colorado City had met Perry Como, and we were all amazed that somebody from Colorado City had met Perry Como. And Roy Rogers and Dale Evans came to town one time. They had a big parade, and we could not believe that these two famous people were there in our little hometown, and others that came along. And we thought life was so dull. But now, from our perspective of more advanced ages, we realize how absolutely rich life was. And we were kings and queens and living in a wonderful, wonderful world. And we didn't have a clue at the time, but we do now.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Worrell. I'm always so intrigued by what makes someone become who they are. And of course, there's a lot of things and a lot of people and a lot of moments that make us. And then we just come into this world, right, with some kind of imprint. But what I know is that you left Colorado City and you went on to college, and you became a preacher and a teacher and an artist and this great adventurer. And then in May of 1979, was it? I understand there was some big fork in the road that really redirected your life. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. I was actually at the time teaching art at Odessa College in Odessa, Texas. Now, for those of you who do not know where Odessa, Texas is, we used to call it Odessalation. And I used to tell people that hellfire won't come as a shock to anyone who's been to Odessa. I had a wonderful job there at Odessa College, and it was transforming in my life. I was doing a lot of photography, and I wanted to do a little mini documentation of the lower Pecos River. Pecos River starts in the Truchas Wilderness of New Mexico, flows across the state of New Mexico, across the state of Texas, and makes a confluence with the Rio Grande near Langtry, Texas, which is west of Del Rio, some 70 miles or something like that. So we decided to put canoes in at Pandale, Texas. And our calculations led us to think probably pretty accurately that Pandale was 66 miles from Mexico. So on the latter part of May 1979, we put two canoes in the Pecos at Pandale. I used to direct the National Aquatic Schools for the Boy Scouts of America. So I was a good canoeist. And I had a staff person who was going to go on this trip with us. He backed out right at the last minute, and I had one totally green novice and another almost green novice to operate a canoe, and then I would be in a canoe, and I was told we couldn't make it and we couldn't do it and all that, but we were going to do it anyway. So we put these two canoes in at Pandale, Texas, and spent 5 or 6 days on the lower Pecos canoeing down to Mexico. Started out one of those beautiful mornings, sunshine, balmy, nice spring morning, you know. But by the time we were finished with that trip, we had been through the most violent electrical storms I've ever been in, with the exception of being in the epicenter of the Lubbock tornado, that famous tornado on May 11th, 1970. That was a harrowing experience. And we got into almost that kind of violence, which drove us to take shelter in some overhangs. We call them caves, but they're really rock shelters on the banks of the Pecos River. So we're cruising along and the weather's looking ominous, and we decide we better get close to that cave we spotted down the river in a contingency of if we happen to need shelter. So we camped that night, and sometime in the madrugada, the raindrops were falling on our heads. You know, kind of sprinkling, and Wallace Bossy said, "Boys, we better get to that cave." And Bill Worrell said, "Oh, no, we don't need to do that. It's going to be all right." And Bill Murchison was kind of asleep, and the raindrops began to fall a little harder, and Wallace Bossy said, "Boys, we better get to that cave." Murchison groaned a little bit, and I said, "Oh, maybe not." And then it was like somebody unzipped the sky, and the water came pouring through, and it started raining like we couldn't believe. And we dragged the canoes up the side of this quasi cliff, lightning bolts shooting around us, and those were aluminum crafts. And we thought, that aluminum's going to attract that lightning. But we got up in that cave, and it was like claps of instant broad daylight. We could see the entire landscape for miles in a semi-instant of a lightning flash. And then we heard this roar that sounded like 3 or 4 freight trains. We had some powerful flashlights, and we shined the lights on this canyon that was to the side of this cave, kind of in front of this cave, and watched a big wall of water and mud and limbs and boulders wash right down where our canoes had been. And we were grateful to be safe in that cave, which we spent 2 nights in that cave waiting for the water to go down. The river rose about 15 feet. And we did some exploring around. The area was rich with ancient campsites, midden mounds. We stayed in that cave for a couple of nights, and water went down enough to where we could travel again. And late in the day, we encountered a rapid that we classified as grade 6, and knew that we weren't going to run that rapid. So we beached the canoe, started removing our gear, the portage around it, and it started raining again. And we just stashed all our gear under the canoes and went looking for a dry spot. And I cannot describe the feeling of awe when we stepped inside this shelter and I saw these paintings on the wall. I didn't have a clue at the time that those paintings were there before Moses crossed the Red Sea with the children of Israel. But it was a transforming experience. And that was before Charlton Heston went up on Mount Sinai and God gave him the 10 Commandments. And he went down, and Edward G. Robinson had seduced the people into melting their gold down and making a calf, golden calf they were worshiping. That was over 4,000 years in the past. And we stayed in that cave 2 nights waiting for the river to subside enough to travel again. And I knew my life was forever changed. I started dealing with those images I saw on the wall and spent the next 7 years developing a style that was related to them. And I had left Odessa and gone to Houston, went to the University of North Texas on a doctoral fellowship, then down to Houston and taught for 6 years at Houston Baptist University. And all this time I'm working on this style. And thanks to James Busby, who was the chairman of the art department down there, he made contact with me for me with the C.G. Ryan galleries in Houston and Santa Fe, and got me into that gallery. And it's been a great climb ever since. People responded to the work. I taught for a few more years at HBU. They gave me a unsalaried year's leave of absence. I moved out here to my ranch, and I've been making art out here ever since.
Wow, that is just, I could never tire of hearing that story, which I've had the honor of hearing before, but those moments of lightning and thunder and how you were driven to shelter, and in that shelter that you had no choice but to run to, that you would be redirected into what is now you know, the forms that you create and bring to life. I'm so curious, what do you think? I mean, I know for me, as many of you, I don't think you can see, but I have a Worrell here. Let's see. And it's a necklace. And of course, there's giant sculptures and paintings, and like the one that's behind him. And we've got some pictures we're showing y'all right now of some of his work. Just awesome. It just touches something beyond this world and within our hearts for me. But I'm curious to know, Worrell, for you, what is it? Because obviously it was so transformative. You got the message there in the caves. What to you, what does it represent? You know, what do you think people so respond to your work, to this work?
You know, people ask that question. It's hard to answer. First of all, I want to say that I'm enormously blessed, and I'm grateful for the blessings. I did pay some dues. For example, I was telling somebody earlier today, one of the things I'm really proud of, I was burglarized 2 times in Houston severely, and had a fear of living in the apartments such as I had been living in. And after the second burglary, I began sleeping on the floor of the pottery sculpture lab at Houston Baptist University. I had a piece of foam rubber and a piece of styrofoam, and every night I'd pull that out on the floor, put my bedroll down, and go to bed and think, I got to find me an apartment tomorrow. And I'd look around, I'd see people just loitering around waiting for some easy mark to move in. And I'd become so frightened and fearful, I thought, I can make it one more night on the floor. And I'd think, I need to get me a place to live. I can make it one more night. And I made it for 3 years, sleeping on the floor of the pottery sculpture lab where I taught. Every morning I'd go to the gymnastics gym and get a good workout, shower, go back over to the pottery sculpture lab and work on art, then teach classes, then go back to the lab and work on art till I was so exhausted I'd drop, throw my bedroll down on the floor and go to sleep. So I paid some dues, and I made art when I had no market for the art. I was in love with what I was doing. I was making these sculptures and creating these paintings, and I was working at midnight hours under a dim floodlight in the courtyard of the pottery sculpture lab. And I remember making a vow to myself and to God. And the vow I made to myself was, I'm going to make art the way I want to make it. I'm going to make it for me and not for someone else. And if people happen to like it enough to buy it, that's going to be the perquisite. That's the gravy, you know, but I'm going to make it for me. And the vow I made to God was that if I ever made it as an artist, I would do everything within my power to assist those who are on the same journey. And I've tried to keep both of those vows. I still make art for myself, and people love it, and that's the gravy. And I still try to help my fellow being, people that are on the road to trying to become artists, and try to give them a boost. If it hadn't have been for Jim Busby giving me a boost, I might be holding a sign on the street corner right now, we'll sculpt for food.
Well, I love that, Worrell. Thank you, because that, of course, plays into my chance meeting of you with Stephen Gladstone, who was my attorney, the Christmas that I came and met you, and then
Yeah.
of course went on to meet the Alderdices, and from that night with them made my Christmas album, which we still, get to celebrate and share. And I want to say I've been witness being in your studio, just happening to stop by, you guys, on any given day, and we've got a few pictures here. On any given day, without COVID, of course, there are people stopping by, and Worrell is stopping to give them his attention. He'll be like going there, and they'll all of a sudden be working on the pottery wheel, or they'll be making something, painting something. He is so generous with his heart and with his art and with his home, and truly that commitment that you made to yourself and to God. I think it is amazing. You can see and feel the love in everything you do, and all the people that come, to be with you and to celebrate with you. And I do want to say this, everybody, here he is following his heart, doing it his way, and being of generosity, and as of today, in the main corner in Santa Fe, New Mexico, there is Worrell's work at the Worrell Gallery in Santa Fe. It's just amazing. What is that like for you?
After 20 years of pounding the streets, knocking on gallery doors, and getting turned down, to almost suddenly go to a position where galleries are calling me daily, wanting my work, is unbelievable. And to have thought 30 years ago that I would have a gallery named after me on the most conspicuous corner on planet Earth for the type of thing I do, it's just amazing. Mary Adams has done such a job with that. And of course, it goes back to Clayton and Jenny Ryan accepting my work in Houston and Santa Fe, and then Frank Howell and Cliff Phelps picking up my work in Santa Fe. And they tried for months to get me to leave the Ryan Gallery and go with them, and I wouldn't do it. And finally, I had a disagreement with the director of the Ryan Gallery, and I went with Cliff and Frank Howell Gallery. And Frank said, go with me. I'll have you in 30 galleries if you want to be in them. And he did. And I was in galleries in Jackson Hole and San Diego and La Jolla and Illinois and Vail and Boulder. And I was in 30 galleries, and I was doing 12 shows a year, and finally cut that down to the galleries we previously mentioned. So I have a little more decent life. I had just finished a new wax. It was a wall hanging sculpture. A wax is a pattern that will be cast into bronze and become a bronze sculpture. And I was going through a period of extreme sadness because I had severed the relationship with somebody I dearly loved. And, I knew that it was never going to work like she wanted it to work and like I would want it to work. And I ended that relationship, and I was so sad, but I knew I had to do it. And on the back of that sculpture, I wrote something. Actually, I wrote it in my journal. And then I decided that I was going to inscribe it on the back of that sculpture. And I named it The Shaman of the Free Spirit. And it talked about how important it is to put things to rest that need to be put to rest, and to do so without shame, without fear, without reservation. And not long after that, I did another sculpture, and I wrote a similar writing that dealt with preserving that thought of maintaining the free spirit. And one of the workers at the foundry was so moved by that writing that she called up and said she had done something she had been dreading and putting off for months. And that was that she knew she had to put her horse down because the horse was suffering. And that writing gave her enough strength to do that. And so I began writing things and putting them on the back of sculptures. And I asked a friend of mine one time, a man you know, we both know, his name's Richard Perna. And Richard Perna was kind of the lead head man for Hamstein Music Publishing. And by this time I had informed the galleries. They kept asking me, are you ever going to publish these writings? And I said, just keep a list, tell people, get their name and address, tell them if we ever publish these, we will let them know. So I asked Richard, I said, look, I know you're in a different line of publishing. You're in music publishing. And I'm talking about literary publishing, but I've got 500 names of people that want these writings. Do I publish these myself and take a risk of people thinking it's a vanity publication? Or do I send them to a publisher and get them published, attempt to by some established press? He said, oh no, you do it yourself. You don't give it to a publisher because you're not going to like what you see if you see it at all. And if you've got 500 people that want to buy that, I'll guarantee you can get a major press to publish it. And that's how my first book, Voices from the Caves, the Shamans Speak, came out. And that's what led to the second book, Journeys Through the Winds of Time, which led to Places of Mystery, Power, and Energy, and conversations with Ellie, and Outside the Lines. And we're about to come out with number 5 right now, which is called Road Notes of a Peripatetic.
Oh, a peripatetic?
Road Notes of a Peripatetic.
I've never even heard that word, Worrell.
Peripatetic.
Oh.
not pathetic, but pathetic.
I get
So,
it.
yeah, Google peripatetic, and I was once a peripatetic. So these are random notes from years and years of notes out of my journals. Just some of them are one sentence, some of them are 2 pages, some of them are a paragraph. And I think it will be an entertaining book for people. And I hope to have it out this spring.
Well, for those of y'all who are just joining us on the Dreamer's Road, I'm here with my dear friend and creative adventurer. If you're listening in, you know that he writes books, he paints, he does sculpture, he creates cemeteries of thorns, which is where we're going to go next. He's just really one of the most creative beings that I've ever had the honor and joy of meeting. You know, a day with Worrell, an hour with Worrell is a gift. I want to talk about the movie that was made, the documentary on your life, on your heart, on your art, and it's really touching to me. You know, the name of the documentary is Emerging from the Garden of Thorns, and I want to invite anybody and everybody, really, I mean it, go to Amazon and plug it in and rent it and watch it, because it's inspiring, not just as an artist, but on the art of life, of living life, of putting to rest things that are no longer needed in our life so that we can really live. And I just, I'm going to show you some of the pictures from Worrell's Garden of Thorns right here. I had the honor of going and personally visiting it recently. Worrell, I mean, what is this? I just love this. You have the Garden of Thorns, this cemetery that you've created to put things that you no longer want or need to rest. I love it. Shame, blame, the Republican and the Democratic Party. And one I know and love so much as an artist, poverty, this idea. Tell us about how this came to be and how important that is for you. And as a teacher, I feel like this is such an important thing that you're teaching us to lay it to rest, people.
Well, I thank you for that acknowledgement, Stephanie. I think there are things that we incorporate into our lives that do not serve us. There's a lot of junk that we need to discard. Feelings of not being worthy, feelings of shame, feelings of guilt. Some of those things just don't serve us. I somehow came up with this idea of just taking some of these things and ceremoniously burying them. Blame. We always have a tendency to blame somebody for the things we do that make things go less than the way we'd have them go. Sometimes we choose poverty instead of abundance. There are just so many things that don't serve us. And the only way I know to get rid of those things is bury them, get them out of your mind, get them out of my mind, get them out of your mind. People get them out of their minds, just, and so I thought I'm going to actually create a graveyard and make crosses and tombstones for these things. And guilt is one of the real debilitating things. We're made to feel guilty at such early ages. Did you spill your milk? Shame on you. Shame and guilt. No, I didn't spill my guilt. My milk. There's the milk right there on the table. No, I didn't spill it. There it is right there. You bad boy. No, I didn't do it. Stephanie did it. She knocked it over. So I lie and I create the blame, cast the blame on you. Doesn't serve me, doesn't serve you, doesn't serve the supreme architect of the universe, doesn't serve anybody. Probably the best way to experience the Garden of Thorns, theologians have argued for centuries over what the Apostle Paul said in reference to the thorn in his side. And people don't know what that thorn is or was. And all sorts of conjectures have been made about it, which we will not go into. But I thought, talk about a thorn in the side. Guilt has been a thorn in the side for me. Poverty has been a thorn in the side for me. Both the major political parties have been thorns in the side for me. And on it goes. So with the help of my friend Spider Johnson, Paul Lowry, and some other people, Terry Sabin. I got them to help me plant these tombstones, cast them in concrete, made some of them out of wood, so they're actually deteriorating. Fenced it off. Every now and then my cows get into it, tear it up a little bit, but it is a garden literally of thorns. And it's what you would call an art installation.
En la madrugada, full moon above.
Bill Worrell,
On the sands
famed
of the river,
visual artist, sculptor, writer, songwriter, musician, adventurer, canoeist, dog lover, and collector of people.
The rains came and they kept coming, and
A 4 or 5 foot wall of water came down, carrying rocks and stones and logs.
We spent 5 to 6 days on the Pecos. 2 of those days we were holed up in caves waiting for a flash flood to recede enough to where we could continue the Odyssey.
what he tells is that he knew from right then that it was going to change his life.
Yes, it is. It is amazing. And I just want to, for any of y'all who are joining us, I think this is such an important point. You know, people that are really, this is an amazing dreamer, powerful dreamer who's lived so many wild dreams and adventures. And this is such an important moment for me. Like, oh, yeah, let those things go. Bury them, Stephanie, so you can actually continue to live on. Thank you for sharing that art installment that you have out there. And I want to.
Yeah. Eric Tennis and his wife, Deborah, spent 3 years making that. And that's normally the kind of thing that a person such as myself would hire somebody to make as a promotional tool. And I didn't put 1 cent into that. They did it as a labor of love because they wanted to do it. They spent 3 years making it, and they have won several first places in film festivals about the country with that documentary. I think it's 57 minutes long or just under an hour, something like that. So
amazing. I talked to Eric and Deborah, and I was so blown away. Like I said, I like every human being. It's such a joy to watch and to see how life has shown up, and you've shown up for life. And it's, again, you guys, it's called Emerging from the Garden of Thorns. And you can go and just put that in at Amazon and rent it for $2.99 and enrich your heart. It's amazing, Worrell.
Yeah, and all 3 of the galleries have it for sale, and I don't have a clue what the price is. It's normal CD price probably, and all of that money goes to the 2 people who produced it and not to me. It's it was a labor of love for them.
Watch it for yourself, though. Believe me, as a creator, as a dreamer, go and watch this film. It'll inspire you. And I do want to let everybody know, Worrell mentioned it. You can go to billworrell.com and check out. That can lead you wherever you need to go. He's in 3 different galleries. That he's limited to those 3 galleries now. One of them is Exposures International in Sedona, Arizona. Amazing gallery. The other is the Worrell Gallery in Santa Fe, which is right off of the square, the main square. And the other one is just in Mason, Texas, Sandstone Cellars. And they have his work, all things Worrell, from paintings to sculptures to these blessed shaman pieces that I get to carry and wear every single day with me. Well, we're
And
good.
you know, it would serve all of you to hear this beautiful lady sing. Stephanie Urbina Jones is a marvelous vocalist. I love her music, and she is recently connected with a couple of other ladies that they call themselves the Texana Dames, or what is it that you're?
The Texarkana Mamas.
Texarkana Mamas. And oh, they make some fine music. Y'all would give yourselves a treat to hear those people sing and perform. And thank you. You know, you're such a gracious person and such a wonderful performer. And I cherish the times when you had me and Sam Baker on stage with you, and Sam would be frightened out of his gourd, you know, afraid to perform. Oh, those were good times.
Oh my gosh, I feel like I know you were well on your way, but Sam and I were babies as artists and dreamers coming to life, and you were such a big wind in our sails and in our heart, believers, and reminding us that God loves it when we dance. Well, Worrell, before we end this Dreamers Road, I really want to end it with, you know, what would you say? What advice would you give to any young or old dreamers? Because it's never too late to live a dream, right? What advice would you give to anyone that has a fire or a dream in their hearts?
Keep dreaming and keep the fire stoked and kindled. And those are important things. I asked a man who was a multi oil man, rich millionaire. I admired him so much. And I was one of the poor boys of Odessa invited to the rich parties. And I got him aside one night and I said, you know, I admire you. And I'm trying to find something out. I'm trying to find out what the ingredients for success are. And I know that intelligence has to be involved. And I know that hard work has to be involved. Intelligence and hard work are, they seem rudimentary to me, just basic, but there's something missing. And I can't figure out what it is. And if you know, I'd like for you to tell me. And he said, you're correct. Intelligence is involved, and so is hard work. There's something else. That is a carefully calculated, non-capricious risk.
Yes.
And I spent 10 years trying to figure out what my risk was. And one day it was staring me in the face. And I took it. And I live like a king. Never give up the dream. Never expect somebody to do something for you because they may not be able to, and they may be able to and simply not do it. Don't be afraid to ask for assistance. Don't be afraid to ask for help of your fellow being, and don't be afraid to give it either. But boy, keep that dream alive. And
well, Bill Worrell, I just want you to know, because we just never know. I just want you to know that you have touched and been a giant part of my Dreamers Road, and taken that risk just a few moons ago, 7, 8 albums ago, and that I just love you. And I'm so grateful that I've got to go on a few adventures with you, and I intend to have a few more.
Ah, wonderful. And the best of all of y'all who happen to be watching this, remember, sometimes people don't tell you facts.
I'm J. Boy Adams. Bill Worrell and I have been friends for 65 years. And as I've said many times, being with Worrell is always an adventure, and today is no exception to that. We're out here building forms to pour the concrete for the footing, and we're building a mausoleum for Worrell out of mason red stone with a beautiful granite top on it. And I've got my friends from Fredericksburg, Richard Laughlin and his crew here, and we're putting him in the ground in fine form and fashion. And this is a man that has meant everything in the world to me. And here he lays another Worrell adventure for his Boy Scout.
Mr. Bill Worrell, if you're just joining us, I encourage you to dial back that interview and watch it over and over again. Sage advice from one of the most amazing lives lived, Mr. Bill Worrell. You guys, that is the second part of a two-part interview with this, preacher, teacher, sculptor, Mr. Bill Worrell. Muchísimas gracias, y'all. And we will see you in 2 weeks on the Dreamers Road. Adios, mis amigos. Muchísimas gracias, y'all. Thank you for watching The Dreamers Road with Stephanie Urbina Jones and the Honky Tonk Mariachi. You can keep up with us on Facebook, Instagram, and by everything at honkytonkmariachi.com. Remember, above all, some dreams are worth dreaming a lifetime to live. Muchísimas gracias. Adios, mis amigos.